together, guys, and I want to just mention a few things. This is the very last podcast of the year.
Sweet.
This has been
Wow.
one hell of a year, just to kind of wrap things up. And I couldn't have asked for a better show today, just to roll out some red carpets. First off, we got the guest starring co-host here, Josh Presby, man, the myth, the legend, king of the jungle.
Glad to be here. Sir.
And we got Ty, award-winning barber, man, pillar of his community. And I had been turned on to you by the Martins, Delbeck 9. Shout out to Delbeck 9. Shout out to Dean Martin. Some awesome guys. Those guys are like family to me. And
Absolutely.
they had Delbeck 9 actually specifically reached out and said, hey, this is a great guy and super involved with the community. And I was looking through all your work. And, there's nothing like finding somebody who's good at giving out haircuts because coming from me, I also am a hair kind of guy. I like to get my hair cut and trimmed up. And the last thing I want is, a terrible haircut. And so it's just definitely something to definitely a great thing to have in the community. But I really wanted to get your background because when I reached out to you initially, I was like, what got you into this? Where'd you start? Where did this all come about? So being an award-winning barber in the first place, how do you achieve that accolade?
Well, I started competing in barber competitions and going to expos probably it was about 4 years into my career. I've been barbering professionally licensed in the state of Mass for over 10 years now. And so I started competing probably 3 or 4 years after I got licensed.
No kidding.
And I was actually a model for one of my mentors, the owner of the barbershop.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and after that, I kind of saw it as like, hey, I could see myself doing this on stage, and
Right.
It would be awesome.
What do you mean by model?
I was a model. I was a hair model, actually.
Okay, so
you have to bring a guy, depending on how many competitions you sign up for that particular, expo or competition, you would bring X amount of models for yourself and to cut their hair on stage.
Nice.
During competition. And so I was like a model in one of the first competitions out in Connecticut, actually. It was the first of, I think it would have been before the pandemic here. It would have been the 10th or 11th annual CT Barber Expo out in Hartford, Connecticut. And the first one was actually just in a small nightclub out in Connecticut. And it was very small, and that's where I was a model for.
No kidding.
So
you said you're from where too? That was funny because where have you been? Where is Sharper Image located? Just for the people who are listening.
Sharpest Edge.
Sharpest Edge. Sorry.
Yep. Sharpest Edge is on Pulaski Street in Ware, right there next to the gas station on the corner.
No kidding. Okay.
We've been down there for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And, I've been there for all 10 years pretty much.
That's awesome.
We used to be on Main Street though, up in Ware, and we were there for I want to say about 6 years.
Yeah.
And I was there for about 3 or 4 of those years.
That's crazy. It's funny how small of a world we do live in, considering a lot of the same people that I've been kind of just discovering myself. And how did you get in contact with all these different people? Is it just been that much of a renowned service that you've been providing for people? Like there's been just a lot of traction in that sense?
I guess, yeah. With all the work over the years, putting into my craft, it became what it is now.
Yeah.
And I get to meet a lot of cool people and different people, and that's how you make the connections,
Yeah.
That was the biggest part about actually like competitions and expos. After the fact of like competing, there was more so like the what would you call it? The networking and creating that big network of people between barbers and stylists and even like nail techs and makeup artists and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say because these days, especially, it's more than just cutting hair.
Yeah.
There's, like you said, there's eyebrows, there's nails, there's... how do you get all those components kind of into the same place now? Is it the same type of feel? Because unfortunately, I've never been there yet. I'm going to have to swing by.
Oh, for
but,
sure.
like, how does that all combine in the same way? Is it still like that barbershop feel?
Yeah. And that's the thing with barber school. When I went to barber school back in, it's a long time now, 2009.
Yeah.
Right? Those same things that you're talking about, like traditional things of a barbershop, that's what they would teach you. Like we were taught the story about the barber pole and how it became and how to hone and strop a razor and things like that. Even though you wouldn't use a straight razor at this point in time, but you're using disposable razor blades now.
Okay, so it's just a little bit different.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool though. So who are the other guys you work with? Like, what's you're part of a team, you were saying, right?
Yeah. Sharpest Edge. I've been there, like I said, 10 years. We have 2 other barbers there now. myself, the owner, Nelson Rivera, and David Hutchinson is the
Cool.
other barber
Shout
there.
out, by the way.
Yeah, shout
That's
out to Sharp
awesome.
Sedge Boys.
But
And
yeah, no, so sorry. So like with everything going on now, what's kind of the challenge with that? I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit difficult to stay in touch with the whole community and everything.
yeah, for sure. With the social distancing stuff,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a, I guess, a bump in the road. But
Uh-huh.
you learn to work around those things, and really where it's affected is just the routine things that you do every day at work
Yeah.
are not the same, and you gotta just adjust, and it's really not that hard.
So like in the development of becoming a barber, what have been some of like the biggest challenges you've had to face as far as, fine tuning your craft and
Uh, Probably the first thing was being accepted because I'm actually Filipino and I'm
uh-huh.
fully Asian, and when I came into the industry or the business of it, there were not many Asian barbers.
So so that made
Wasn't
made
very
it.
accepted into the
Mm.
barbering like community, not yet anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
until it expanded into what it is now, and now you have
What
this
what
eclectic group.
was like the image for a good barber?
Uh, I
Was it
guess
the aesthetic because you were Filipino, or was there like
I think it's a combination of things, really. Yeah, the
yeah,
aesthetic, yeah, definitely, but probably more so that there was nobody of my descent that
right, right,
was really good or into it at the time like that, and now you just have an eclectic group of people
right.
that are barbers.
So like beyond that, is there like a type of hair or a type of thing, or rather, how would you say it? A type of
Like an image or a
yeah,
look.
yeah. Is there like a
Style.
look
You
that's
know, like
hard to get?
you go to a tattoo parlor and everyone's always got crazy tattoos and
Yeah,
big gauges and stuff. You like kind
Yeah.
of go into a tattoo parlor, you see a tattoo artist with like no
Yeah.
tattoos, you're like, oh, who's this guy?
yeah,
Is he an
exactly.
artist
We've
or?
actually posed that question a couple times in the shop with my clients.
What's
Like
that?
if you were to go into a shop, right? Let me ask you guys this: if and there was say three barbers in there. One was bald. One had a medium to short or longer hairstyle, like kind of like mine, right?
Yeah,
And then one guy had long hair, like
Like-
Josh's, right? Just
right.
wild long hair. Who would you necessarily go to, or who would you pick?
I definitely would pick you because you got everything lined up nice. You look well
I
trimmed. like you got
probably
it
yeah,
together.
that's a good answer. I agree with Joshua on that one for sure. I would go with the person who has a haircut,
Right.
right? Because if they don't have anything going on or bald, I guess that would yeah, it wouldn't be a huge difference. Because I've actually
Probably.
always fun fact about me, I've always gotten my hair cut by women. I think I've had my hair cut like once by a guy or twice in my life,
Mhm.
just by chance. And I mean, it hasn't been that great, but I don't think that has anything to do with
Right.
it. Was just the person in general.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, every time I've gone to anywhere that cuts hair, because I'm like just super low maintenance. I was getting my hair cut at like Hair Cuttery for the longest time. I know.
Master cuts.
I'm sorry. No, now where do I go? Oh, there's this barber shop in Longmeadow I go to. They're pretty good, but I'll probably go to you guys next. I'm gonna try it out. I really am.
Definitely.
I kind of wish I went prior to this just to
Have the
get a little
conversation and-
yeah.
definitely. It'd be
How
awesome.
is that though? Like, so what percentage of your job do you feel like is a lot of like in human interaction and talking and
A lot of it, man.
yeah,
I saw you talking about it on the other podcast about doing the podcast in general and
Yeah.
how you have to. You're essentially you don't know anything about the other person you're about to talk to.
yeah,
And it's a difficult thing. I was never good really at first at generally it's like talking to people.
yeah?
I
Here, make
think
sure this is just a little bit more
Yep.
in front.
so I think barbering actually taught me how to conversate with people and just get to know people better and things like that.
Yeah.
Give the ability to have a conversation, a real conversation.
Did you ever see yourself being a barber when you were younger? What did you want to do when you were younger?
No, I wanted to be a basketball player, Mike.
Really?
I thought I was going to the league, man.
No way. Did you play a
No.
lot of basketball?
Yeah, I grew up playing basketball with my older brother. We
Yeah.
played like every day, man, out in Ware. We had courts out there. outdoor
That's
courts.
hilarious.
Yeah, but that was short-lived.
Yeah,
And,
well, you were saying you didn't go through all the way through high school, and was that something you were pursuing a lot in high school, or?
I played basketball all the way through high school up into JV year, and that was basically it. And that's when I had dropped out actually of high
Yeah.
school. And then immediately the same year, I got into barbering, and I went to barber school out in Worcester over
Hey,
at
good for
Robert
you.
Academy.
So you ended up
Yeah.
just getting like your GED and going through that, or?
So at the time, you didn't even have to get your GED.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and you could just go for your tradesman's license.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Was that a big roadblock for you because of not completing high school in your life?
Not necessarily, Mike.
Yeah.
I don't think so anyway. Because
Yeah.
it's like a lot of things you can do without it, and now they actually require that you at least have a GED
Yeah, I was gonna
equivalent.
say.
It
It's
is what it is.
it's kind of a weird formality too because it's like you want to be a barber.
Mhm.
What about high school has anything to do with being a barber?
Yeah.
Yeah,
know?
you know your passion. You know what
Yeah,
you want to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
So like
exactly. High
this
school,
formal education that isn't really benefiting you as far as what you know
eh,
you want to do. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. I
it's
agree.
painfully trivial.
Yeah.
It's like yeah,
There's a lot to it, Mike.
social studies. Social studies doesn't really make the best barbers, like or something
Science,
like
yeah,
it's
math,
math.
count money, and that's about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's it though.
It's a weird thing. Well, I was fortunate enough to get the chance, like many do these days, to go to like a trade school. Like we had a cosmetology, so there was people who were able to
Oh yeah, that's
get
right.
in hair cutting experience and health. And I went for electronic media, not electronic media. I went for electronics, for instance.
Oh
And
really? That
not that
electronics?
not that I've ever used it, but I
Mhm.
guess what I always say when I'm thinking about it, it's like, well, it's sometimes really important to know what you don't want to do just as much as it is to know what you do want to do. Because I mean, talk about say you go through high school, you go to college, you go into because I mean, how much does somebody who's 18 really know what they want to do with their life? And
Mm.
then you go into college with this enormous amount of debt, go through college, probably have your doubts along the way, excuse me, and then come out of it with a degree and $60,000 in debt.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to justify going, I don't want to do this anymore.
It's difficult.
You have
Yeah.
to do that now.
And even in barber school, in the trade school, we saw a lot of people who were in my graduating class that started with me,
Yeah.
and probably more than half the class ended up dropping out by
Wow.
halfway through.
What, at barber school you said?
Yeah, at barber school. Yeah.
Okay.
So and it's a crazy thing. Some people even get the licenses, whether you're a barber or a cosmetologist,
Yeah.
and then go through it for like a year or something, 6 months, and then realize they don't want to do it, and you're stuck with that debt and the license, whether you want to renew it or not, and it's a difficult thing.
Yeah. What's the process like to renew the license? Like, how often do they make you do that?
Every year.
Every year.
I renew my license. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a fee, and
It's just is it a
yeah.
test or it's just
No,
a
no,
fee?
no testing. Anything like after you graduate barber school, if you want to do any like extended education,
Mhm.
you'd go and pursue that on your own.
What was that like for people who are listening and myself included? I mean, I can't imagine what is it. Oh, I shouldn't. I'm just going to ask you, what is
Mhm.
that like, the experience of barber school? Is it just
Barber
as
school?
long as high school or
No, it was about 9 months.
9
It
months?
was
Oh,
9
cool.
months. And it's a jungle, man.
Yeah.
You got all kinds of people there, and,
It's a
and
crazy
it's like,
vetting process. There's just lots of people.
there's a lot of people, yeah, and they let you in there, and you kind of got to just find your niche, and
Mhm.
it's about just completing school, and you got to keep your mind focused on that, and that's the thing that I wasn't messing around with nothing, and I just wanted to complete school, and that
Yeah.
was it.
Now, is it
Uh,
kind of like a certificate, like what they give you? Or is it
yeah,
they call it a license?
it's a license. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
gotcha.
actually you're issued a professional license in the state of Massachusetts.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. It seems
It is.
much more formal.
Yeah.
I kind of did the same thing with like training. I wanted to be a personal trainer for some
Mhm.
time, and then I ended up getting a certificate. And I can't stress enough towards people who are trying to do something that might be more specific and doesn't have the doctor, lawyer, tailor,
Mhm.
sailor type of, very specific, rigid and common jobs. But like yourself, you want to be a barber. There's people who want to be trainers. Josh, you do herbology. You know what I mean? And you got your license and certificate for that, right?
Yeah,
Or is
same
it?
sort of thing.
Yeah.
I had done an apprenticeship under an herbalist for about a year, and then it's funny because even throughout my apprenticeship, I learned a lot, but it was really after the apprenticeship and being out in the forest and working, doing the work, that's where you really get your real education when you're really hands-on and
Yeah.
you're figuring
Absolutely.
things out like
Exactly.
that. So
And that's the beauty about those types of programs is that, like you said, 9 months. And look at how masterful, and I'm sure I can speak for you in the instance that I know so many people who only have good things to say. Look how great you are at your skill. It's
Yeah.
because you didn't have to spend years doing trivial shit
Yeah.
to become what you wanted to be. You could get right into it just after a little bit of we'll say, academia.
Yeah, and essentially, it's like Josh said. A lot of the hands-on stuff is when you actually like. I didn't really necessarily learn how to do a haircut in barber school.
Yeah.
It was a lot of bookwork and theory
Terminology.
and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and education stuff. And just to prepare yourself because you're dealing with razor blades and scissors and
Yeah,
people's
yeah.
faces and stuff like that. So, that's the big thing. But same thing as Josh said is you learn a lot of the stuff hands-on when you're actually in the field, in the
Mm.
barber shop.
Did you guys have workshops? You said you didn't have any workshops or anything like
There,
that
there,
for
there
barber
was
school?
there was workshops. So like the first, I think it was like the first month you would be there, and you were upstairs at the time of like the beginning of Rob Roy, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
and
At the beginning of what now?
the Rob Roy Academy.
Oh,
Uh,
that's the academy you went to.
right,
Cool.
right in Worcester. And so you were upstairs for like an hour each day, and then eventually after like a month, you would be able to go down into it was essentially a barber shop. And
Ah.
that's when you would take clients, and they'd take people off the street, and for like I think it was like $5, you can get a haircut from one of the students.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and
They do that and this is actually a little freaking great pro tip. They do that at Springfield College for people who want cleanings. They have a dental program.
really,
So instead of going to your dentist and getting that cleaning for like $70 to $100, I think they'll do it for like $30
Yeah.
or like $20. And a student will do it, but
Right.
I mean, cleanings are pretty straightforward.
straightforward,
It's
yeah.
not surgery or anything.
and
So-
they're learning in the process.
and
so
they're
that's
learning in
big
the
thing.
process, so they're probably even a little bit more we'll say attentive to what's going on,
Right.
versus somebody who's been doing it for years and is just tired of their job.
Yeah, happens.
That shit happens.
It
It
does,
happens
no
a lot.
doubt.
So yeah, what is your vitality like with something like this? Are you still how passionate about it? As far as like what your involvement is in the community, what have you been doing in that sense? What is the one of the bigger things that you've been sort of participating in?
I want to say just like community outreach stuff.
Yeah.
Doing things for my community. We just did I was part of a food drive. Some friends from a nonprofit organization reached out to me. They said they had a bunch of boxes of food, and if anybody in Ware would need any of them,
Oh, that's
rather.
awesome.
And so I took the boxes and we dispersed them. Me and my son actually did that.
Oh, cool.
Over the weekend, we got, I think it was like 60 boxes of food to people in the town. So it was cool.
How do you
Things like that.
Yeah, how'd you start that? What did you do?
Uh, so one of my friends, Roland, he actually reached out to me, and he said there was a bunch of leftover, that these were going to military vets actually, and a bunch of them were from like the federal government. They reached
Mm.
out and they gave them to these guys up in Agawam. And so he reached out to me and he said they had a bunch extra and if I could do anything with them. And that's like, I think my thing, other than barbering now,
Yeah.
I've utilized my platform of barbering and I've built that up to what it is now. And it's enabled me to do things like that with my community and the people around me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself going from there? Where do you see yourself taking this?
Hopefully to have my own like nonprofit organization. I want to build something that's like set in stone, like a real like foundation or company that would be like a hub, serve as a hub
Yeah.
to all my community outreach work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a really good plan too. And when you already have at least your heels in the planted,
Mhm.
you can kind of drive that influence a little bit better and get people more involved and like stoked about it.
Absolutely.
How many people do you usually see in a given like week? Is it a pretty busy place? I mean,
Yeah,
you've been
we're
able to
busy.
keep up with the
Absolutely.
regulations and
It's actually a funny thing you ask. Hey, it's been busier.
yeah.
Even after some of it's natural growth, of course, but a lot of it's like something weird with this pandemic where people, I guess you got nothing else to do, you come get a haircut, right? But
Yeah.
it's been extra busy even through the pandemic and stuff.
I remember right after like when things finally started open up, I needed a haircut bad.
Yeah.
I went without one for a while.
Really.
And that's the thing. It's like when it comes to growing hair, I think everybody would want to have hair like Josh.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody.
Maybe not everybody, but I wouldn't mind having longer hair, but there's such a long, awkward process in between it being something I could pull and tie back
Right.
from where it is right now.
The awkward stage is real.
The
Yeah,
awkward stage
yeah.
is real, you know what I mean?
The
And-
growth
and,
period between.
and when you have a job where you kind of need to be it somewhat representative from a aesthetic standpoint,
Right.
I don't know how long I could rock a hat for or
Right.
something like that, just to hide my head.
Right.
So I want to dive into like some myth stuff with you. Like
Okay.
I see a lot of this stuff on the feeds. It's just advertisement, hair growth products, grow your beard out, fill your beard out. This, all these different creams or one of those little prickle brushes or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not a guy who has a beard. You're talking about that. You actually were kind enough to put this on stage here. But Ty brought this in for me. It was really cool of him. Just what do we got here, Ty?
Some shaving products.
Shaving products,
I
straight
notice
up.
you're pretty clean cut.
I am clean
watching
cut.
The podcast.
I can't even grow a
And-
beard.
So
I
clean.
wish I could.
But yeah, these are small natural products. It's part
Oh
of the
no
shaving
way!
system.
A bracelet, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Thank you.
And yeah, those are actually like I produced those a while back, and I had a couple left, and I wanted to give you one, man.
Thank you, dude. I really
Definitely.
appreciate that.
Definitely, bro.
I'm gonna sport this right now. Does that say Ty cut? Ty cut.
I cut it.
I like it, dude.
Yes, sir.
I love it. I love it, dude. Yeah, so, a guy like me, I want a beard. And, I'm looking at these things. I'm like, is there any way that it could be something that helps? And what is your take on that from what you know?
Some of those things I've heard work. I've never really had issues with growing hair myself.
Right, yeah, I was going to say,
And-
you got a nice full beard there.
Right, and a lot of my clients, they have a lot of hair themselves.
Yeah.
So
You're trying to, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. And I've dealt with some of them, and they've tried some of those products, like Bosley and
Right.
those different systems. And some of them said it actually works. Some of them said it did nothing. So I guess it depends on the person, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably comes down to a lot of genetics. Did you ever have to
sure.
get into like the, how hair is developed and understanding of those types of things, like hair care, hair treatment? How does that really work? Like, what's like a split end, or how do you avoid having like terrible? Is there anything you can do to your hair, like washing it or something like that just increases the quality of your hair? Or
Yeah, washing it definitely, in a system that works for you. I always tell people everybody's head is different. Everybody's hair, scalp is different. So what works for one person might not work for the next. And you really have to find what works for you and what's not going to keep your hair from getting too dry or too greasy and things like that. It's really on the person, though, and trying to figure that out.
Yeah, so it probably comes down. Yeah, that must be tough too. Do you have a lot of people who are like, "How can I fix a bald spot or something like that?"
Yeah, you do. You get that a lot.
What's
It's
the
different things?
what's the MO on that?
For a bald spot?
Yeah, well, just like when you're losing hair, receding hairline, like these are just things you pretty much would have to deal with as is.
A lot of so you deal with what's natural, right?
Yeah.
And trying to organically like fix a bald spot or something. So what I say, if somebody's balding and they're subconscious about it, the shorter the haircut, actually, the better. A lot of people would think you grow out your hair long, and, like the old guys doing the comb over and stuff, and combing over the bald spot, and it doesn't give it the same illusion as if it was shorter into a little bit of longer hair. So the shorter you go, the more of the illusion that you have more fuller hair, I guess you could say.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I was busting on Jeremy the other day. He's totally bald now. It's a friend
Really?
of mine who had a receding hairline. He can grow a beard better than both you guys though. He's got a great beard. He
That's
goes,
what counts.
He'll bust me for not having a beard, and I'll be like, oh, but man, this 14-year-old hairline's really weighing me down.
That's great.
And he's like all pissed off, and so we bust each other's balls about that. But no, I want to get to know you a little bit better, Ty. Like, so what is some highlights of your background and your past, and how you became who you are today from maybe just more of a influential standpoint?
So I guess being from the islands of the Philippines, I was born on the islands.
No kidding. So you're straight up from the Philippines. You were born there.
Right.
Holy shit.
And my mother and father, they brought me here when I was about 4 years old. And I lived in California for not even a year. And then we came to Massachusetts, and we stayed here with my aunt for a while. And then until we got on our feet, basically. And I've been, out in Massachusetts.
What did they do for work?
My father has been a mechanic. He's a diesel mechanic now for the last 10 years or so up in Michigan. But he's been a mechanic for over 40 years. And he does that out in Michigan now. And my mom, she's worked a bunch of retail jobs.
Yeah,
she actually works out of her home now. She makes different like pieces of jewelry and stuff like that.
So
She sells it out of her house.
I'm assuming you have a lot of family still in the Philippines?
Yeah, my whole a bunch of my family, cousins, aunts, and uncles live out there still, up in the islands.
That's awesome.
I'm from Angeles City. I was born in Pampanga province.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's originally where I'm from.
Have you ever gotten a chance to go back?
No, not at all, really.
Not like
no.
you haven't visited at all?
No,
I
plan on going back though, probably very soon.
Yeah,
I'd love to go back.
I was gonna say that must be awesome. I would
Yeah.
love to go to the Philippines. Steve went there. Shout out to Steve Way. Yeah, he said he was awesome.
From his stories, man, just sounds like such a beautiful place.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Do you remember
island hopping?
Oh,
yeah, man.
Well, sailing's big out there. Like
sailing.
It's a really big thing. A lot of people love doing, and they'll do it for days. I don't know if you guys ever been on a sailboat. I was lucky enough to be on one. It was last year. It's still 2019 as of right now, and 2020. Sorry, it was 2019 when I was on the boat, and you can live in those things. I mean, they store so much fresh water and so much food.
It's crazy.
They got a kitchen, they got a bathroom. And that's kind of one of those things. Ever since I did that for the first time, I'm like, man, what an experience it would be to go island hopping in the Philippines
on a sailboat.
Do you?
Amazing.
Do you have?
That's the dream for sure.
I know, like that would be so much fun. I feel like just considering the network of islands and places you can go, and that was the one thing I didn't get the benefit of is sailing with a destination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you kind of just we just went out to sea and then came back. You know,
that'd be awesome. I actually have a client. He's Owen. He does that for part of his job. He's a part of like academy, and they it's like a sail team. And he was down in Florida, and I forgot exactly where they went from Florida, but it was like a handful of days trip on a sailboat with a bunch of other guys, like his team there, and they went back and forth from Florida to somewhere else. I forgot where it was, but.
Oh, that must be awesome. Yeah, you can. The guy who taught me, he had gone all the way down, I think, to the Keys from here once.
Really?
So it's, you just, pack up some food. I don't know how many days because I forget. I don't want to botch it, but a sailboat does not go that fast. That's another thing people don't realize is that there's a lot of really cool physics that go into how the wind pushes the boat, and that the speed of the boat can't exceed the dimensions of the hull. So like it can only go so fast,
right,
depending on how big the hull is and the mast and everything. And it's just pretty cool when you're taking those things into consideration and plotting a course the old-fashioned way type of thing, because you can only go in a certain direction based off of where the wind's blowing and those types of, or you can only go so fast based off of which direction the wind's blowing. But back to the Philippines. I mean, do you remember anything of being back there?
No, not really, man.
Because you came here when you were so young.
Yeah, me and 4 other brothers and sisters. We came here with my parents and my 2 youngest, my brother and my sister, the 2 youngest of the family.
Yeah.
So I'm one of 7, and they're the youngest. They were born in the States. They were the only 2 out of us 7 that were born in the States.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And nobody's gone back and visited since?
My older brother's been back with my father, and I believe my sister went back with my mother one time.
Yeah.
So it's my turn, I think. Next.
Yeah, I know,
I'd definitely love
Yeah,
to
I
go.
was going to say, dude, you got to go. You got to go.
I'd love to go back and like retire on the land and just live off the land or something like that, you know.
Well, what do you have any of the language?
No, I know a little bit just from, talking to my mom and my dad a little bit here, or hearing them and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
No, not really though.
That's a tough one. I was talking to, who was I talking to about it? I'm trying to think what guest. Oh, you know what? I was actually on Inappropriality with Mike Torch and the guys, and I was saying, if you're trying to learn a language, it's so important to at least be somewhere within the environment that has that. Right. Because I think too often people are convinced that you can just, buy a software like Rosetta Stone or something like that. And I don't know. I'm not saying it won't work, but if you have somebody who you can communicate with, you not only learn how to speak the language, but you also know how to apply it in a sentence versus just the trivial, like what words apply to what.
Exactly. It's more of like a hands-on teaching.
Right.
When you're learning from somebody else that speaks it fluently too, daily basis,
Daily basis, and you can speak with them, FaceTime, phone call, something of that nature, or even text, and if you want to get into the how to write it.
Right.
But yeah, like without that, I feel like it makes it so hard, and it's such like a superpower, because knowing only one language definitely, makes travel probably a lot
Yeah.
tougher.
Communication barriers.
Communication, especially if you like traveling.
For sure.
But these times, I guess it's during these times, it's not the worst thing to not be able to communicate a lot because there's just, I don't know, there's nowhere you can go right now. I guess you can go to Mexico. I'm going to Mexico soon.
Yeah. Well, I know some people that went to Puerto Rico in the
Puerto
last
Rico,
few weeks, month. Yeah. There's a couple
there's
places you can go.
places you can go.
Some resorts are open too.
I have a friend from Kenya. Her son just recently traveled back to Kenya, I think maybe 2 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
So there are some places you can go.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem like everything is super locked down?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like, because you're right, there are places that are open, and then there are not open, but that you can go to, and some other ones that you just can't. I think honestly, what it is, and why that there's a perception of that is that you just can't go to Europe right now.
Oh yeah.
I think that's like
That's a
it, and
common
that's
one,
where most people go if you live
Right.
on the East Coast.
Yep.
That must have been one hell of a flight too, with Philippines over.
Yeah, it takes about a day. It's like 24-hour flight.
Have you done any traveling out of the States?
Just through more so the East Coast. We're actually planning trips to California and more Midwest for competitions and stuff because I've traveled like pretty much all of the East Coast and Northeast mainly in doing competitions. And I kind of pride myself on the travel part of it and being able to do that through my job. So,
dude, that'd be
cool,
awesome.
Yeah.
Is it so? There's only one sharpest
edge, yeah.
Sharpest edge, right? There's
only one,
Just only one right
Some
now.
mom
And
and
you
pops.
were saying you were hoping down the road to have sort of your own establishment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something in the works, and eventually that's where you get. I think with barbering is you want to become an owner and you want to get to that point.
Yeah.
I guess that's the end all be all within the business of it,
But competing, that's kind of cool that you like doing that. How does, if you could break down the components of a competition, how do they grade that? Like, is it just, I mean, in my head, it's just who can make a better haircut, but good haircut is subjective. What is what's the criteria to be a winner?
So there is a panel of judges that they hire for each show, and different criteria is how clean your haircut is, sharp your lines are, how sharp your beard might be for that part of the competition, and things like that. The more work you put into your client during the competition will get you more points and things like that. It's a culmination of things, I guess.
And you've only competed around here, or not here, but in Worcester so far?
Worcester, Springfield, Indian Orchard.
Wow.
Yeah, all over Massachusetts, Connecticut. I've competed in New Jersey, a couple times in New York City. Actually, that was really fun. New York City was awesome. That was a big competition.
What's a really terrible haircut experience for you? Does that ever happen? Like, does somebody come in like, yo, you messed it up or something?
There was when I first became a barber, I think it was actually when we first moved down to Pulaski, so it wasn't really too long ago, some years ago. And there was a guy, we were cranking, me and the owner all day, we were cutting hair, and guys in and out of the shop. There was this one particular guy who was in there. He was in there for like hours waiting for a haircut. And I noticed he had come in and out of the barber shop like a handful of times. And so he ended up being my last client of the day, and we were there. It was our late night, a Friday, so we were there till like 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I asked him if he was ready. Like, I asked, hey, you ready, boss? You ready to get your haircut? And he goes, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I noticed something was kind of off with him, and, he sits down, and I asked him what he wanted for a haircut, what he wanted to do with his hair. And he was like, well, I don't know if you can do it. I'm like, what the hell? And so he tells me that, and I'm like, what do you mean, boss? And
Yeah.
And I pointed over to the bunch of the posters, and we have like a collection of pictures of haircuts.
Yeah.
And I was like, what one on there that, best suits you? And it was like a 2 on the sides and a scissor cut on top. So it wasn't really like
anything crazy.
Yeah, it wasn't anything crazy or hard or anything like that. So I was like, I can do that. And he goes, all right, well, how much are haircuts? It's like, at the time, they were $16 for a regular haircut, And I was like, $16. And he responds and he goes, well, how about $14? And I'm looking at the guy like, no, man, this is not up for debate.
Yeah, this isn't a fucking auction.
We
This
can't
is
just barter.
It's $16, man. That's it. And you know,
Was he like Italian or something? I feel like that's something a lot of Portuguese people would do that shit too.
Just
Like
barter?
$20. How about 18?
Yeah.
How about 18?
How about we meet in the middle? $10.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. So he agreed to the $16 haircut.
Yeah.
Eventually, and I'm giving him a haircut, and I was just fading up his sides, and we were probably almost done with the haircut, and he kept doing this thing where he'd like turn to me, and it'd be like real quiet, and all you heard is my clippers, and he'd just stare at me.
Oh God.
Awesome.
And so he did that. He did that a handful of times, and I kind of got weirded out. And I finally asked, like, "Are you all right, man?" And I was like, "Are you drunk?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, yeah."
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
And he was
I'm wasted.
really drunk, man. And I ended up giving him probably the best haircut of his life, though. And he left happy, and he tipped me. He gave me more than the $16.
Wakes up the next day like, what the hell happened?
What
He
happened?
probably
I
thought
asked
you-
for this mohawk, man.
Yeah. he probably thought you said 60 if he was that drunk. That's so
I
funny.
like that though, the eye contact thing. I have a friend, she's a massage therapist, and she was telling me one time, she goes, yeah, the most awkward situation I've ever been in my life. She said she was giving this guy this massage, and she's like behind him working on his shoulders, and he's just like staring up straight into her eyes.
Oh God.
She's like, yeah, like, do you want an eye pillow or anything? He's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I see so many
awkward.
like I see
So awkward.
so many like funny videos they share on like Instagram and TikTok and stuff, and they'll share it's like becoming a meme where the person getting their haircut's just making too much eye contact.
Yeah, they're looking at the guy, the barber or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, it's too much. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
Does that happen?
You're
Does
not
that
supposed
happen a lot?
Yeah, I'd say it happens, and then I think when the client realizes they're doing it, they'll quickly like turn away or
Yeah.
something, And
Yeah, I
that's the thing.
definitely. I will say I do not do that.
No.
I feel more awkward when I stare at them.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it's kind of a weird service, because, like, for instance, I used to be a deli clerk, and like when you're making a sandwich or something, and I feel the same way on the other side of the glass when you're asking somebody to do something and they're making you food. The last thing I want to do is, personally for me, is stare at that person.
Right.
And I think, and imagine doing your job and somebody just staring at you. I feel like that's something that you probably encounter the most, because you are doing something to their head.
We're hands on. Yeah, we're right there, and yeah, it gets awkward, man. When people stare like that, it's not very. Yeah, we're not fond of that.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine, because it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, that's just too much pressure.
Right.
What are like some cues? So I was thinking when you were talking about what the guy asked for, because he
Yeah.
obviously was just super vague. And the one thing that I've really fine-tuned when I go to get a haircut is how to ask for it.
Yeah.
So that way everybody understands what's going on. Because like you said, if somebody just comes in, one, they don't know what they want, and then
Right.
two, they don't even know how to ask for it. Like when they do find out what they want, it's kind of like trim the sides and the hair.
Give
like,
me a little off the top.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I think it's part of the relationship with your barber or your stylist too. Is as long as you know them, they're gonna give you the good advice and tell you what you need to hear, but not just give you a haircut that you didn't ask for, or I guess you could say like a service that's not gonna fit you or your style.
Yeah.
I think you learn that as you become, better friends or build the relationship with your client. And yeah, that's part of teaching your clients. I do a lot of that stuff in front of my client, whether it's like spraying my clippers, so they better understand that, I'm sanitary and these are the things that we
Right,
do
right.
here. But yeah, it's a part of the building process, I think, with your barber or stylist.
Yeah. In other words, stick to the same person.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been my strategy anyways. Well, I'm glad I've been doing it, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
I feel like if
that's it.
some people, because I'll see some people come into the barbershop, it's like, oh, whoever, just cut my hair. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, that's a gamble, if you ask me, especially if you get your hair cut off, and
Yeah.
it's the last thing you want. I think the worst thing in the world is to have a bad haircut, because you just have to wait it out,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's not what not what you want. You got to show everybody, or wear a hat or something.
Right. Just cover it up.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, avoiding that was just pretty much develop a relationship.
Mhm.
That's crazy too. Do you feel like most of your job is just establishing a level of communication with people like that?
That's a big portion of it, I think. Yeah. and just finding your niche too. Like I said earlier, is that's probably the biggest thing. Is learning what you're good at and,
Yeah.
fine tuning and honing on that skill, and then seeing where that takes you, and then learning the other parts of barbering. I'd say, after that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know you're super ambitious about it because
Yeah.
when we were talking, you were like, "Is it okay if I bring somebody in the studio to
Right.
cut their hair?" And I wish I could say yes. I wish I had a bigger or better studio for it.
Someday.
Someday we will have to do it.
I'd love to do that, man. Yeah, I'm really about it. I love barbering.
Do you
man. I
have
love
you
cutting hair.
have you found yourself having to like go and do that at other people's houses
Yeah.
in all this?
With during the pandemic, I had to do that because we couldn't work in the barber shop, so
Yeah.
I was doing house calls, and that's a service I had already established prior. So, but after when the pandemic like started, it was probably more forced into doing, and I kind of unlocked some things or learned some things about that part of the business,
Yeah.
the home services and stuff like that, that were actually beneficial. So we're expanding on that, and I'm doing more house calls now. Yeah.
So what are some other things you're deeply passionate about that you could see yourself expanding on later in life? I mean, do you see yourself being a barber forever, or do you see
Yeah.
yourself maybe having other passions that might
No.
also develop as time goes on?
I think the focus is solely on barbering. Like
Yeah.
I said, I created the platform of barbering to expand on the community outreach stuff that I do.
Yeah.
And with barbering, it's become pretty easy. I think you were talking about that on the other podcast, Inappropriality, that
Yeah.
you were saying where once you, it's the passive income, like the passive
Yeah.
income, you can just get into it, and once it becomes that, it's almost just like you're
You
riding
do it
the
on
wave.
your own time,
Yeah,
right? You stop.
yeah.
In other words, you stop working for money. That's kind of where I'm
Exactly.
going with that. Like, how do you translate what you're doing, since it is a service,
hmm
into something that becomes more passively
To me,
lucrative?
and I think a lot of the guys that cut hair or barbers, we don't necessarily care about the money. It's about
Yeah.
cutting hair, meeting people, and the experience of it all.
Right, right.
It's cool, man. And I think that's worth more than any money you can pay me.
I couldn't agree more, because that's really what it is. It's as soon as you find something you love doing for just doing it,
Mhm.
that's when you know you're doing
Right.
doing something right, because
Right.
you can never run out of energy doing something like that.
No.
You can never run out of energy having fun or doing something you love,
Right.
because you love it.
You're always passionate about it.
Exactly.
Even like the community outreach, like that's another thing too, is like you were saying, like it's not always about the money. And same
Yeah.
thing with your community outreach. It's about benefiting people and
Yeah.
being like a meaningful member of your society. And
Right.
that's what I really admire about like the whole thing, is like you're benefiting people in that way.
Right.
But
Yeah.
also doing that at community outreach and just like, yeah, looking out for your community. It's such an important thing. It's like the society that we're in nowadays.
Yeah.
There's too much division, and there's too many people not trying to
Yeah.
help each other and try to reach out and be brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I really admire that's something you're passionate about
Appreciate
too.
that,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Yeah.
seriously. That was definitely one of the more admirable features of who you are, and what I was looking forward to getting to meet
Mhm.
you. I was like, that's something I would love to see more people doing, especially in times like this. Is that, I mean, I hate to say it doesn't happen enough, but I think that is the case. Is that it's just
Yeah.
not, people don't realize, in other words, and I don't think it's always done out of people being selfish, but I
Yeah.
think it's done out of people not recognizing how much power they have.
Or understanding that,
Yeah.
like you were just saying, though, once you love what you do, what do they say? You'll never work a day in your life, right?
Exactly.
And that's a part of it. Is when I'm doing these things, I'm not working.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. I'm meeting new people. And I'm actually doing something for people that
That's so awesome.
you don't expect anything back, but the way the universe works, it just keeps coming back tenfold, and then you just put more back into the community.
And
stuff.
trusting that, man. Trusting
Yeah.
that is everything, because again, it's back to recognizing not only your power and how much you can actually do,
Mhm.
but how much that effort in and of itself is helpful.
Right.
I think it's too often in today's society that everybody's convinced that everything is so messed up. Everything is so hopelessly
Right.
I don't want to say fixable. It's a kind of a lame word, but it's just irreversible.
It's a part of a mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, you
for
have
sure.
to not only believe that you have the ability to evoke change, but you also have to believe that change matters.
For sure.
And if you don't, then how much ground can you really cover, you know?
I think that's what keeps me going with the community outreach stuff and doing things for people is like it's almost like a game in my mind. How much could I accomplish and to do so much for people?
Yeah.
And that is like the more you do, the happier you are, for yourself and for other people. And it just, like I said, it comes full circle, and eventually you get it back. But that's not what it's about,
No, it's not. But it is funny you say that, because that is the truth.
Yeah.
You know, when you put things out, you get them back, and that's
That's
kind of that's like a very universal law to so many things that have to do with business or community or
Mhm.
or just um social networking from a physical
Yeah.
standpoint. It's like the more you give out, the more you get back, and you can continue that process. It almost is as it's just like a positive feedback loop
Right.
in a good way.
Right. And it's never monotonous either. It's
No.
different every day,
Yeah,
depending on what you're doing, especially.
Exactly.
And even with my job, I'm meeting different people every day. Some guys I've been cutting for over 10 years now, and they've
That's
been clients,
awesome.
and I consider them friends, And same thing with that is I do things for my clients all the time, giving them a free haircut on their birthday and things like that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, man. And it's, like I said, it comes back, and we just
I,
give it
I
back.
like that. I like that because what you often find is people aren't even allowed to do that in their line of work, even as a barber or a haircutter. It's like
Yeah.
the amount of centralized, and just talking now, like basic business systems that you see more applied in the more modern age, is that and it's applied in the more modern age, but it's not encouraged anymore, is
Mhm.
is this perpetuation of centralized command, where like whoever you're working for, or whatever organization you're working for, those type of freedoms, being able to facilitate a fundraiser of some
Right.
sort, or be the guy, or be the barber who gives out a free haircut, it's just not even allowed.
Right.
And so now you have everybody who's working for you in that organization having to address, or the only way they can do things is by contacting the head,
Yeah, the top
the
guy.
superior, the top
Right.
guy. Instead, now actually Jocko Willink, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a fantastic writer, and he's a retired Navy SEAL now.
Wow.
Wrote a fantastic book about or rather, the book was called Extreme Ownership, and it really did a good job painting a picture on how beneficial decentralized command is, and
Mm.
when people in the organization have the ability to function as their obviously as
Their own boss.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, governing themselves in those instances, and having the ability
Mhm.
to act as the manager in that sense.
Right. And that's the freedom you get with being a barber. You're
Yeah.
essentially your own boss, I'm a general contractor, an independent contractor.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I can make up my own hours and things like that, and I can give out a bunch of free haircuts in a day.
That's
and-
awesome.
and
Yeah,
it-
so you get paid just by, in other words,
Per
just
service.
per service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've built it up to what it is now, and it's done me pretty good.
So
you know?
were you like, whose idea was it then when you guys started doing these things for the community? Was it like you guys kind of got together and were like,
Yeah, well, I took a lot of the ideas from the owner of the barbershop, Nelson, when we
Yeah.
got together. So, crazy story. The way I got to working for him, or with him rather, is I was getting a haircut with two of my buddies, and we were up on Main Street, and he had heard about me cutting hair a little bit, like around town,
Yeah.
hooking my friends up and stuff. And it was like Easter weekend, I think, some years ago, and he asked me if I wanted to make some money.
Really?
I said, yeah, man. Is that a rhetorical question?
Right,
Like-
right.
and
Sure.
so he goes, go get your equipment. He's like, I heard you cut hair, so like I'll let you cut hair for the rest of the day if you come. And I wasn't licensed or anything,
Mhm.
but he said I could make some money, and I came.
This
and,
is before you had, like,
Yeah, this is before I even went to barber school, man.
wow.
And so he gave me an opportunity, and I made, like a few $100 within like a handful of hours. And he asked me at the end of the day, like, hey, what do you think, man? I was like, hell yeah, I could see myself doing this.
Oh, so this is before you even knew you
Yeah.
wanted to be a barber.
And so he made a deal with me, essentially, and he said, if you want to become a barber, you need to get a license, and he said, I'll give you a job. And
Wow.
the rest was history. I signed up for barber school that same week, and I was in barber school actively like 2 weeks later.
What about it was it that you liked so much?
I used to do my own beard and stuff. I've had a beard
Yeah.
since I was like a kid, man. And
Yeah, I was gonna say.
and I've been doing my own beard, and then I got to doing like other people's like beards and lineups and haircuts and stuff, and that's how I got into it, really. And seeing him, Nelson, the owner of the barbershop, all the time, and talking to him about it, he kind of like probably grew the passion within me to pursue it, for real.
That's
So
awesome. It's funny, and it's great to pay tribute to that. And it's funny how simple those things come about too.
it's
You just
crazy, right?
don't even expect it. In fact, I was working with John. Shout out to John Fennell Painting, and it was with my buddy Dylan. Shout out to Dylan, and he mentioned to me at one point because me and him were really big into working out. I'm a personal trainer now as my day job,
Nice.
and he said, "Oh yeah, you just." He was talking about like a certificate you could get. He's like, "Oh, this is all it costs, and this is all it takes to do it." And then all of a sudden, I got went through the process of getting the certificate, and then like you said, the rest was kind of history
Yeah,
from
you're
there.
a personal trainer
You
now.
got once you got the job, and you get your foot in the door. But kind of back to what Josh said, what a valuable thing he was able to give you though is that experience in the first place.
Yeah.
Because half the time, like even when I started out, I got my certificate before I had any experience, and if you ask me, I was a terrible trainer.
Yeah.
The fact that I still do it now, if I were to really think back to where I was when I started, was like I was awful, and it's hard to believe.
Yeah, I couldn't give a good haircut to save my life at the beginning of my career. No, it's hard, man, and that's part of the journey, or is learning these things and kind of adapting
and believing in yourself. We had a really great
Big
conversation about that.
Yeah.
I've had that with a few people, and it's if you were to, in other words, base the value of your skill off of your first attempt doing it, you probably would have just quit
a long time ago.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was something in it that obviously you liked enough to keep failing and getting progressively better along the way.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like if you want it enough, you'll keep working towards it.
Yeah.
And it'll become something that's bigger than you even imagined. And I think that's what it is now, is that and that's part of like the game in my mind about it, is to keep improving on it and seeing how much I can improve and how good you can get at one particular thing.
Yeah.
Master your craft, so to speak.
Yep, absolutely, dude. Well, there's that saying I've always had is like, if you want to, you will. And I think oftentimes that will and desire get mixed up.
Yeah.
And that's just maybe a definition of my own, because you could say the two are the same. But desire is usually like you want to do something, but you don't do it. You just desire to do it, because I think by definition, desire is suffering. It's just, you want something,
Right.
but you don't have any we'll say gumption to go
Yeah,
forth,
to
no
pursue it.
aptitude, no ambition, and when you want to do something, it's a whole nother thing, because it's typically found that you do end up doing that, or you do end
Right.
up achieving it when you want it. It's like the theory of what's the theory of attraction.
Right.
What's that? Is it the theory of attraction? No. Gosh, I forget the name of it. But it works in both ways. It works in both ways, because also if you're constantly doubting yourself in the event of trying to become better at something, you end up getting worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or quitting.
Or quitting,
That's the worst.
exactly.
But that's I think part of the wonder of it all, is like, how much could you do to get that good at one thing?
Yeah.
And I'm all about speaking things into existence, man. If you're gonna say you're gonna suck at something, chances are you're gonna suck at it.
Yeah.
If you pursue it and you say you want to do it, and you try to love it and things like that, you're probably gonna enjoy it, and you're probably gonna be good at it.
It's funny. It sounds so simple and hokey, but it is so freaking true.
It really is.
Like, just to give yourself the credit and be like, listen, I'm gonna get better at this, and just tell yourself that. Even just by telling yourself that, you progress a little bit.
And it's
Yeah,
all
your
in
belief is strong. Like,
Huh?
your belief is strong.
It's
Yeah.
strong.
Whatever you're kind of
Yeah.
telling yourself, if you're kind of painting that picture, you have a mental image of how you think things are going to go.
Yeah.
In a way, I don't want to say you're bound to that, but in your own mental state, you kind of are.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? You don't give yourself the room to say, this could go really well,
Right.
or or vice versa
I
in
know.
any way that you're
Add
thinking of it.
add
but-
add to that the thoughts and opinions of other people on what you're doing
Exactly.
too.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing
That
in
is
a lot of
another-
people's
yeah.
minds, that where something could deter you.
Overvalued.
Right. And it could be somebody that you don't talk to on a daily basis, you don't even know that well in
Right.
particular, and they're
Or-
saying
or
things
know
like
at all.
that. Yeah. And it's a thing where you just gotta will yourself, man. Like you
Push
said,
through it.
just push through it. And if you
Yeah, that's a crazy one. I even am just astonished at myself. If I think everybody is, if they're honest with themselves, of how much that somebody's opinion matters to you, but only when it's negative. Like you're saying, it's kind of funny how, like, when somebody says, "Oh man, that was awesome," you go, "Yeah, thanks."
Thanks. That's it.
But if somebody says, "Yo, you suck," you're kind of like losing a little sleep. Like,
Mhm.
what the
You
heck?
let it
You know, like,
fester and
what do you mean I suck? You know, like,
mhm.
why'd you say that?
Overthinking things is the big thing too. Sometimes it's as simple as like we're talking about these different things, and sometimes it is that intricate where you got to
Yeah.
figure some stuff out. But a lot of people, I feel like, overthink things and then try to like overshoot, on things, and it's unnecessary at times.
No, I can't say that. I can't stress that enough. And in the endeavor, when you are embarking on an endeavor, the funniest thing is that the worst thing that could happen is you end up where you are now.
Hmm.
Like, for instance, say I wanted to be a barber. Me being afraid that I'm gonna suck and
Hmm.
not doing it puts me in the worst possible situation. In my head, doing it and right sucking and then inevitably not doing it is
Hmm.
where I'm at now. Technically, I'm not a barber now,
Hmm.
right? My
Yeah.
point is that if you are somebody who wants to do something and your fear is failing, you
Stuck at step one all
yeah,
the
you're
time.
you're stuck at step one. You don't give yourself the chance to grow or
Hmm.
learn from the failure,
Right.
and you inevitably, like I just said, you are where you're
Right.
most afraid to be.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. Going back to the competitions, the CT Barber Expo, like I said, it was 10 or 11 would have been the annual. They have one every year, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the only competitions in the Northeast that I've never placed in, right?
Uh-huh.
And I could have quit 9 times ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I could have, but it's this like competition with my mind that I'm having, where I'm like, no, next year I'm gonna win, dude. Watch, and
Yeah,
I lose every time.
but you
But
have that belief,
but
and that's how you're gonna grow. That's how
eventually
you're
I'm
gonna
gonna
become
win.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's it. And I always tell people, man, I think you learn more from your failures than your wins.
Right.
Couldn't
It's
agree
a
more.
biggest
So
lesson in
true,
life
man.
is probably your losses. You gain more knowledge and things like that from losses, I think, than your actual wins. Because wins are like whatever, man. I won, and let's keep it moving, and you celebrate and
Yeah.
things like that. Losses fester in your mind, and they really make you think about what you just did or whatever it is.
And how to do it better.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
how to do
like
it
I
better.
was gonna say, I'm sure even though you lose every time, or not every time, but like the
Yeah.
times that you have,
Yeah.
you still walked away with something.
Something.
There was no real loss. Loss is sort of like a measurement. Like,
Right.
oh, you didn't get the ribbon, but the whole point really was to participate in the
Right.
first place.
And that's a big part of it too. Getting up on stage with like these a bunch of barbers,
Challenging
yeah,
yourself.
it's hard, man. People in that one in particular in CT up in Hartford, people fly from around the world to
Oh my
compete in
gosh.
that. Last So it was last year. I had a guy from Paris. He was cutting next to me, and it was the comb over and beard competition, and he was right next to me. And I noticed his accent, so I started talking to him before we were like setting up, and he told me he was from Paris. I was like, "What the hell, man?"
Wow.
And over the years of even just competing at that one, and that's probably the biggest one in the country,
Yeah.
in the States. And I've met a bunch of people from Palestine, from Paris,
No
from
kidding.
California, even in the States and stuff like that.
And they
They're
all
flying.
come here to Connecticut?
Yep, and to
Holy
compete.
shit.
It's they call it they've dubbed it the Super Bowl of barber battles. Yeah,
Wow.
everybody comes there.
Is
I've
that
actually
like televised or anything too, or?
it's on
Sure
the
they have
radio and
coverage,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
they cover it over in CT more because they're out there in that area.
Yep.
But I've actually met like different like artists and stuff. I've met Fat Joe, and I actually made friends with his son Ryan at one of the competitions, and I've met Rick Ross at a competition.
No
It's
way.
Awesome.
it's random.
Holy
Yeah.
shit.
That's so cool.
It's like obviously it's not the intention to go meet those guys when you're competing, but
Right.
it's just like an
It's
added
kind of
thing.
a
That's
perk,
cool,
a perk to the
Yeah.
rather, associating with
But
that.
the way my mind thinks is like you never know. Like you slip Rick Ross a business card, and maybe you'll cut his hair one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
And
maybe he'll
that's
cut his hair. Maybe he'll love the haircut so much he's like, "Yo, come be my personal
This-
barber.
Right.
We're going globetrotting."
Yeah.
This is it.
And all it took
Seriously.
was a passing of the card.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. People got to think that way though. Is like
Exactly.
Well, that's
sometimes
the
you-
beauty of opportunity. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And it kind of goes back to what we were saying on how much how much somebody really believes in themselves. Say that did happen. He
Mhm.
does call you. Yo, I need a personal barber. Now people are chalking it up to luck.
Right.
But really, it's preparation meets opportunity.
Mhm.
You were ready to be that guy, and you were there to meet the guy.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's I think to properly attribute what really goes down in putting yourself in situations where you can fail.
Right.
You know, like high risk, high reward. And the funny thing is that risk is sort of an illusion in that instance, because you don't really do you have to pay even to go into those?
Yeah, you pay
a
to
little
compete.
bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's essentially paying to
Learn.
market yourself and learn.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's-
what an
it's
experience. You know
Seriously.
what I mean?
all of that stuff together, it becomes it's like classes in session in that sense.
So I'm
where-
assuming the CT, the one that takes place in CT, is a step above the one that you last went to, or did you say you?
I was in
Because
the
you're
last one.
you're
yeah.
award winning. Now, where did you get your awards? Mostly
Springfield, Indian
Okay.
Orchard, Worcester twice. So I'm the back-to-back comb over and beard champion out
Oh,
in
that's
Worcester.
awesome.
And I competed out in what's the place there? The big place there.
Is it a town?
No, it has it's a convention center out in Worcester.
Oh, Big E. No.
That's out here.
Shoot, yeah, that's out here. Gosh, I don't know much about Worcester, to be
geez.
honest.
That was actually really early in my career where I did that, and I won. And it was part of that Asian barbers weren't accepted within the industry, and so I wanted to go to the different like major cities, to Worcester and Springfield,
Yeah.
to make that make it prevalent. Like, hey, I
What
can
was
compete.
like the mainstream barber at that time?
It was, I guess, in a sense, it was like the celebrity barber. Any barber who cuts celebrities, and that's the thing now too, is like a lot of barbers pursue that just to become like a personal barber for a celebrity or something like that. But it's not like that for everybody though, and I think that's at the beginning that's what it was. Now there's no telling what the image of a barber
Yeah.
per se is now, because it's so eclectic. There's so many different people
Right.
in the industry now. It's awesome. I love it.
That must be really cool.
Yeah.
That in other words, people can come from around the world and participate in stuff like that.
Yeah.
How many more times, or rather not how many more times, but how often do you do that? Do the competitions?
Competing?
Yeah.
So I've competed in definitely over 50 competitions to date now.
Wow.
Yeah, out here, but I've only won like a handful, and I was doing it probably one every month for a while, for some years, and that's how I got up to that. But now, doing with like all the other work with it, I've probably done one every year.
Yeah.
And it's usually the CT Expo, because I really want to win there. And then the plan was to expand and go to like the West Coast, Midwest, and start competing out that way and things, and start going down south as well and competing out there. And different expos happen all around the states. So.
And you usually just the ones you have competed with are around here usually. Or do
Yeah, like Northeast, East
Okay.
Coast. Yeah, I've been like I said, as far as Jersey, New York, and down in Connecticut and stuff like that.
That would be awesome, man. Landing a gig with somebody who you just need to work for just them.
Yeah.
That would
It'd be
just
cool.
make things easy, huh?
Yeah, I definitely would, as far as like financial, I guess you could
just
say.
have one client.
But I think being in the barbershop and seeing all the people that I see,
Yeah.
like the eclectic group of people that I see every day and every week, I think that's like what I enjoy most is conversating with everybody that's so
Yeah.
different and learning about people,
Well, that's one thing I've been able to carry over in a sense for myself, anyways. Is that's a bulk of a personal trainer's job as well, is just socializing with
Right.
people and being good at it, or being comfortable with it. And it's really easy too when you're very good at what you're doing with them. And it's just kind of personally one of my favorite things about the job.
Yeah.
Because you can have awesome conversations with people, and you become in a sense a little bit of there's a little bit of a psychology background that develops with that.
Yeah.
Based off of who you're working with, and considering you have to be okay with dealing with a variety of different
Yeah.
people, and people are so different from a psychological standpoint, and
For sure. And everybody's going through stuff, so that's
exactly.
we talk about that all the time in the barbershop, especially like lately, is where everybody going through the pandemic, everybody's going through something, right?
Yeah.
And it's nothing for somebody to just sit down in your chair and spill out their heart to you.
Right.
And it's happening. It's like it's kind of a cool thing in that sense, where somebody confides in you like that, and they trust in you, the person. so much that they'll tell you pretty much like all their secrets or these things that they don't even tell their wives and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. And you develop a relationship with these people, and
Mhm.
it's awesome, man. That's like probably my favorite part about
Well, they become your
barbering.
friends, and yeah,
Yeah.
like I was telling you, the guy who I went sailing with, he's a
Hmm.
client of mine, you know,
Yeah,
and it's
that's
funny
pretty
the
cool.
places you end up going and seeing and doing, just based off of the connection with the community
Hmm.
and with people that you get from a service type of industry, rather type of job. How many relationships and things have you been able to, rather ones that are more on the outstanding side of it, that
Yeah.
you've been able to have with people that you've known or met in your time?
Within barbering,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people. I'd say I cut about almost 100 people a week.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's like you meet a bunch of people, and I get new clients every week too. So people I've just met, last week that I cut for the first time.
Right.
It's just developing those I think of everybody that I've been cutting for more than the last 5 years, a friend, you
Yeah.
know? And it's something that when you sit in my chair, it's not just the service you're about to
Mhm.
get, it's the conversation as well. And it could be beneficial, you never know. And I think that's the beauty of it, is having those conversations and building with each other. And it's essentially what we're doing right now, Mike.
Yeah.
We're building this network where, I guess my viewers or my clients are going to see this, and,
Right.
and, and vice
And
versa.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah. And that's how barbering works in that sense too. With the
Yeah.
competitions, it's all about networking and just
It
putting
really
yourself out
is.
there.
It really is.
Yeah.
But the best part about it, it's not just that it's networking, but it's also personally
Yeah.
networking, where a lot of the times networking that occurs in today's day and age is done behind like the veil of social media.
Right.
So sometimes well, not sometimes, it's just not as authentic,
Right.
period.
For sure.
It's just how it is. That's the nature of online, and it's probably the reason for a lot of the social distress that there is these days as
It's
well,
a
because
lot.
people don't know what the hell anybody wants or what the hell anybody means by things. You can say just about anything, and anything can also be taken out of context.
Right.
And I feel like people are becoming desensitized to the value in authentic and organic conversation with a human being,
Right.
to the point where they don't realize that the person who may have said something that is extremely offensive to them might not have been said in the light that they thought it was
Right.
meant to be
It's
said
a
or
lot of
something.
things are misconstrued, especially when you're dealing with social media. It's not a
Yeah.
real thing. Uh, so that's like a hard thing too, is that I use social media only for promotion and marketing and stuff, and that's what I've
Yeah.
known. It's been the best tool for me in my business. But you see a lot of people go there for all the other stuff, the unnecessary thing, and it's really I don't like it for
Well,
that.
it's the beautiful thing about it is that with the internet and all the different social medias, there is a wealth
Hmm.
of great information and great connections. Like, oh, look at this guy. This guy's
Right.
freaking one of the best barbers around. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
they could discover that
Right.
through the social media. But like me and you were just talking, just a little background. Me and Josh had gone on a sweet little road trip to Vermont recently, so we had a lot of conversation prior. But we were talking about the majority of what you find on the internet now. It's like it's asses and fear mongering. You know what
That's
I
it.
mean? It's like that's your menu.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. There's no like quality. Well, there is quality content, but
Yeah.
that's so my thing. Like with social media, with smartphones and stuff in general, is that we have access to this technology that we could be using to such a meaningful end.
Yeah.
We could be learning other languages. You can learn how to play an
Right.
instrument, how to do anything you really want to do.
Right.
But so many people, it's just like this mindless sort of scrolling. They're not actually doing anything really to benefit their lives. I feel like
Yeah.
people just don't utilize technology to the fullest extent of its potential, and they just
Yeah.
use it for like this kind of
It's
dumbed
not.
down.
Yeah,
I
it's
agree.
it's not being done out of authentic interest anymore. It's being done out of rather, involuntary addiction and impulse. It's
Yeah.
like because you can just keep scrolling.
And it's like it's such a unauthentic thing where I sent a picture of a haircut to my photographer last night,
Right.
and I asked his opinion on what it was. And I learned just not too long ago that barbers on social media were photoshopping pictures of haircuts.
Oh no.
So this is a mind-blowing thing to me. All these
Crazy.
haircuts that I was putting up organically, right?
Right. Right.
Authentic haircuts. Uh, get trampled by these it's like digitally enhanced haircuts.
Yeah, they're
And
doing the brushing.
some
And
of them are
Crazy.
very it's minuscule stuff where they're not it's slight editing and things like that,
Yeah.
but it makes the haircut look that much
Well,
better.
that's just it, because
Um,
these softwares, and I can tell you, not really off experience, because I've never really used Photoshop or
Mhm.
for Affinity Photo or anything, but
Right.
you can make people's skin just perfectly composed.
It's amazing.
And if you do that around the haircut, the haircut's going to be like perfect.
Right.
'Cause half the time there's
My only qualm with it, right, is if you're putting something like that that's supposed to be authentic when
Yeah.
it's not. What happens when the client gets into your chair and you can't produce what's
Oh,
in
yeah.
the picture? What
Right.
happens there?
Exactly.
authenticity always wins.
Yeah, and I've always been that way as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, no, and based off of the pictures you share and stuff like that, they can
Mhm.
tell. I mean, not only that, but I mean, it's amazing the work you do
Thank you.
just from being able to only see you on
Right,
social
social
media
media.
for myself. Soon enough, like I said, I am gonna.
You-
Where's far from here, but I'll go. I'm
It's
gonna
not
go
too
for
far.
sure. Yeah, it's not too far.
20
Well,
minutes,
here's the
25.
thing: I was going to hair cuttery for a while in
Okay,
Ware,
right,
so
and they closed down recently.
oh, they did.
Right, like during the pandemic, the shutdown, they couldn't make it through, I guess. and,
Wow.
but they've been taken over by a group of girls that were working in there before,
Oh, okay.
and they opened up another salon in
Gotcha.
its place. So they're still doing all right.
Have you noticed that with what would be the official name for the industry?
Barbering,
Barbering,
yeah.
cosmetology, yeah.
Barbering
What?
and cosmetology.
Yeah.
They are two different.
Have
but
you noticed like a dip in businesses around local businesses?
No, not necessarily. Not with ours anyway. But with other businesses, it's here and there. It
Yeah.
depends on what it is.
Because like I know a lot of gyms ended up closing for good
Right.
with all this.
And I guess it really comes down to what the restrictions are on each business. Like
Yeah.
gyms, it's really tough.
Right, right.
I cut the gym owner and Ware, and it's you're jumping through hoops just to try to keep business open and
Yeah.
keep yourself afloat, and it's tough. But some people haven't had, I guess, that problem because of the stipulations too, or the the
Right.
regulations.
There's not like, in other words, a pretty hot light on you or
Right.
on barbers for instance. It's a pretty
I don't think so. No.
no. I couldn't imagine it would be.
Right.
Because more often than not, it's pretty straightforward to keep things sanitary, just
Right.
because it's just a chair and then the equipment you used. And
Yeah, we learn in barber school, like I said, you don't learn a lot about haircuts or to do a haircut, and a lot of it was sanitation, sterilization,
Oh, okay.
and those types of things. So when we got into dealing with this pandemic, it was like, all right, so I'm going to continue to do the things that I already do and I was taught to do, but 10 times more.
That's
must
how that
be-
always struck me. Is like I obviously it's been a long time since I've got a haircut, but every time that I had like gone,
How long, Josh?
Oh,
How long
man.
exactly? I wanted to ask you that.
it's
actually.
probably gotta be 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
now, I
Really,
would
dude?
guess.
To
You
get-
grew that all that in 5, 6 years?
Yeah, yeah.
his
If I
hair
were to
goes,
guess-
impressive, man.
it's going down to your chest
Yeah.
and it's curly.
Right.
So
Yeah, if I were to
And-
straighten it. But that's what I always found is like when I was, or if I was even to go with somebody else to like a barber shop, is everything always it always struck me as like it's a very sanitary environment.
Yeah.
I think that like a lot of businesses and different things through this pandemic have had a lot of issues because just by the nature of like the business or whatever, it's like either a lot of people in a tight space or there's nothing.
Right.
But yeah, barbering has always struck me as like a very clean environment. for
Right.
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine there'd be much room for error in that instance, because I mean,
No.
yeah, there's only one person can get a haircut by somebody at a time,
Right.
and even before this, like you were saying, sanitizing the equipment was
Right. It was
was
a thing.
pretty
already.
much the
Yeah.
straightforward protocol.
I think going back to that actually with the regulations, the biggest thing that I've probably run into that bothers me the most, I'd say, is that not having the waiting area open. We can't have anybody in the barbershop waiting for their haircut.
Oh,
They
and
have
it's
to wait in
freezing
their vehicles,
outside.
and it sucks, man, to tell
Yeah.
a client like, hey, man, you got to wait out till I call you in, but it's part of the the rules and regs right now, and we
Yeah.
have to
Abide to that.
yeah, but that was like a thing that I really enjoyed is having everybody in the barbershop, all these different people, and everybody's just yelling and talking and we're
Yeah.
conversation about different things.
The banter and everything.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the
it's
best.
It's the beauty of it, man,
It's
and you
true.
learn a lot from that, and
Yeah.
it's cool. But I'm missing that right now because of the rules and regs of the pandemic.
Well, dude, you're definitely. I just want to say it right now. You're an inspiration in that sense. Being somebody. It doesn't matter what you do. You're somebody and I'm just being vocal about this, but I'm realizing, you're somebody who loves what they do,
Mhm.
and that's more than a lot of people can say for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's amazing how often people will sacrifice what they love, or not even that, but sacrifice even the chance to live a life that they want to live for monetary purposes. They'll have a job
Yeah.
that they don't like, or a job that just is lame.
Right.
You know
Money
what I mean?
comes and goes. You can't take it with you.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
this thing that you love, you're also using as a platform for like community outreach and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
benefiting your community, which
Mhm.
I just can't stress enough. That's just like it's a huge thing. It's so
Crazy.
important
Yeah.
in like the world, and especially now with everything that we're going through, just connecting with your community and everything. That's just a huge thing.
How long have you been doing stuff like that? I forget if I asked.
Probably
The community outreach type of stuff.
6 or 7 years. It started. I'll go back to this story where it started. Where Nelson, the owner of the barbershop, he did this family field day up in Ware, and
Yeah.
it was in Grenville Park. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it's
Yeah, I think
one of the
yeah.
local parks in Ware, and he did this family field day that was annual,
Okay.
and every year it was free. Everything you did inside at the field day was completely free, whether it was eat or compete in a like a potato sack race with your family, or go play basketball, or have a softball tournament right there, and things like that. And so with that, I said, the same thing with being on stage as a model of the competition. I said I could see myself doing this, and and but I could see myself doing it in my own way.
Yeah.
And so I've helped organize backpack drives and food drives, and we did a Chair in the Square event with some of the other cosmetologists and barbers from the town there, where all of the proceeds went to military vets.
Wow.
And so different things like that, man, you could reach so many different demographics,
Mhm.
I think is the coolest thing. Like, back to there not being so many good Asian barbers when I started.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like growing from that and understanding people more so, and 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 then just unlocking that where you're able to communicate with people in that sense to give back to the community and things.
Wow.
I think
Seriously.
it's an awesome thing.
And what that demonstrates in a big way is that because you do what you love doing,
Mhm.
you're not like spiritually, I guess would be the word, energetically drained from your work. When you
Yeah.
do something you don't enjoy very much, there's very little room for you to grow,
Mhm.
in a for your soul to grow, for your spirit to grow. There's
Right.
no, you get exhausted. That's the toll. That's what you actually really pay. When you're doing something you don't love, you pay in energy. You pay in like you're exhausted, and not on a physical level. You're just exhausted. Like that's why sometimes you could have a stressful drive home,
Mhm.
and then finally get home and sit down because you're so tired. But
Right.
you've been sitting down the whole time.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're like,
Yeah,
oh.
mental fatigue
This
is a
feels
real
good.
thing. dude.
Yeah.
No, it is,
And
man.
and we don't when you do not preserve or at least value your own mental health, you
Right.
can't go out of your way to then set up these organizations or set up these fundraisers or what do they call them when you get the food
Food drives.
like food drives, anything like that,
food drives.
because that does take a lot of energy. It takes time.
Yeah.
You want to be able to be on top of it and do it right.
Right. And just like anybody, I have a regular everyday schedule. So
Yeah.
coming out of that it's a thing too, but it's
Well, I would
you know.
assume you're a popular barber. I mean, then
Yeah.
that's going to take more time than a regular barber.
Yeah, no, definitely. And but those things, when, like you said, when you enjoy what you do, it's nothing to give back.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest part of it I really enjoy about barbering, is giving back to the community, conversating with different people and meeting new people and stuff.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Well, that's what they say. They say your network is your net worth.
Mhm.
It's not the other way. It's
I
not
believe that one.
it's not a monetary thing.
Mhm.
It really does come down to you just being somebody who can not only reach a lot of people but be with a lot of different people and find yourself in a lot of different environments. And not only that, but there's a lot of amazing growth that occurs when you're always in a situation like this,
Mhm.
where you know what I mean, where you're talking to somebody for an hour and however long, maybe 2 hours, that you
Mhm.
don't even know.
Right.
And you'll be able to hold a conversation and continue the conversation. There's so many different amazing things that you end up becoming and building on when you really
Right. It's like unknowingly.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's value. Value is so it's just such a wide range of different things that are so valuable in
Mhm.
life that I think are really looked
Right.
over.
And value is not just doesn't just apply to monetary things.
Yes, exactly.
And that's probably a big issue right now. Forgot the percentage of like the suicide rate during the pandemic and depression rate and things
Yeah.
like that. I know the drug use and overdose rate has gone up
Way
like
up.
30% or something
Yeah.
like that. So that's a big thing within the states right now, dealing with that. And I guess having the barber, and I argued this when they were trying to tell us who was essential and who was not during
Yeah.
the shutdown, and I was without work for like 2.5 months.
Oh,
Right.
God. So you
Yeah.
guys got close too.
We had to close down. So it was like, how are you going to tell a certain person or worker in the states that they're non-essential or they are
Yeah,
essential?
essential is so subjective.
I thought all American labor was essential,
Yeah.
and that's the way I've come to know it, being an immigrant from the islands,
Right.
and it's a tough thing to deal with, and I think that's what's in everybody's mind right now is like how you're gonna survive to the next day with this pandemic going on, and it's caused a lot of depression in the states.
And an insane amount of challenge. I mean,
For sure.
unfortunately, fortunately, neither of us can really talk about what it's like to have lost our business and our job.
Yeah.
But my point is that that is something a lot of people right now can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it saddened me seeing all the different arguments occurring online where people were just like, "Oh, you're just being selfish because you want money."
Right.
And it's like it's more than that.
No.
Obviously, money is a facilitation of a product or a service.
Right.
But what was really happening, like you said, it's these little things that count the most. It's that person, okay, fine, they got a haircut and they paid money for the haircut, but what they also got was to see a friend, to talk to a friend,
Right.
to vent a little bit,
Get some
maybe.
things off your chest.
Get some things off your chest. Or like even for us, we're basically in the health industry, but on obviously more of a what would be considered a luxury, but it's training.
Yeah.
And even something like that, it blows my mind that people shy so far away from it when at this whole time,
You should be taking more care of your body.
yeah, your health is determining your safety. So
Yes.
there's and health is also another thing that's kind of subjective because there's different types of health. There's the mental health, there's the physical health, dietary health, and it's weird. It's definitely a weird time to be alive when you have the government kind of making those decisions
Right, for you.
and it's like,
We were taught the freedoms of America and things like that
Yeah.
is what we're
Yeah.
what we're working towards and things like that. But seriously, when you're kind of you've lived a certain way and you've done these things without any kind of pushback
Yeah.
at all, and then you're told like 1 year or day that you can't do that anymore, or you can't do it that way anymore. When you're
Yeah.
so used to it, it's a difficult thing, man, and people go crazy over that.
I know we no longer nobody can ever give this generation shit.
Yeah.
For
Nah, man. None of them.
I feel
None of
like
them.
everything's happened in the last 20 years. Like
Yeah.
I think about it. So we are going. Yeah, it's gonna be 2021 soon,
Mhm.
and we've seen like 9/11, however many different viruses and flus, like
Right.
the swine flu and
And there
the
was a Y2K.
Y2K. Yeah,
That was
I don't
a
know.
thing.
You remember that?
Oh,
Josh?
of course I remember.
That was
man.
wild. People
Everything
were like
was gonna shut
storing
down.
water. And
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
knew
The year
people-
2000,
Yeah.
everything's
Right.
gonna end.
all the computers are going to reset and the nukes are going to go off. I knew people with 300 gallons of drinking water in their basement.
That's crazy.
Like those
Really?
those 5-gallon drums just
Yeah.
throughout the whole floor of their basement.
Well, that's essentially what people were doing during the pandemic when it first hit.
Yeah.
People were buying out the toilet paper and the paper towel and,
And
stuff.
the meat.
And
It
the
was
meat, yeah.
crazy.
In the meat.
And the
the
meat.
meat.
No,
They were, though.
So I thought. So yeah, they were making a big deal about the toilet paper. I'm like, well, I can arrange,
Somewhere.
alternative
No, I can
here.
wipe
But
with my hand, but I don't have bacon in my fridge, right?
exactly.
There's a
like
ton of leaves outside.
yeah, like there's leaves and things that you can do. But I was so amazed when I went to the grocery store and they were out of like basic meats and stuff like that. And it kind of goes to show you how often people will gauge a situation with an emotional response.
Yeah.
And that's probably what a lot of those people were thinking is like, oh,
Right.
the world is ending and this is it.
Right.
And I need to
emotion
survive.
and not logic. you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
I think that was
well,
that.
emotion always loses in those situations because when you think it out, you can then prepare and organize yourself
Right.
in a better way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I just and I think it wasn't just people. Like that was also the issue with how government was also delegating itself, is that it used an emotional response to deal with something that I've said it before and I'll say it again. If I had one wish, I'd wish that we would have dealt with something like this like it was a natural disaster, because it is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
affected a lot of people.
It's affected people on a natural level. People
Yeah.
get sick. That's not new. You know what I mean?
Right.
People will always get sick,
Yes.
and people will always die.
Mhm.
So we kind of went about it. I mean, it's no secret. It was purely political.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
now you have people defending a political idea or
Right.
ideal or something like that to justify their actions, instead of, like, when a hurricane passes through, you can't say the bank didn't, or rather the church and the houses didn't get torn apart. You're lying.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? It's
that's
like
not a thing.
everybody got together and helped people out. It's because it
Yeah.
was something we all recognized that was happening.
Right. And that was a cool thing about that. I think seeing people go out of their way for other people during this,
Yeah.
and even though you had to socially distance, I guess,
Yeah.
people were still looking for ways to be there for each other. Looking out for your parents and your grandparents and
Right,
the elderly
right.
and stuff was, like, deemed a thing, and a lot of people were already doing that, but it kind of gave a lot of other people the reminder to, hey, check in on your family, man, and your
Yeah.
friends and stuff like that.
Seriously.
I think
Well,
that's cool.
that's one thing that affected. I think the people who were affected the most were really more of the elderly.
Mhm.
I know or had known a few people who already had passed away just recently.
Oh, really?
And I'm thinking to myself, their last year on this planet was in solitude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a terrible thing, right?
It's
to
scary
think about
because
that.
I'm thinking, well, what's the alternative? Like, if they were to just go out and live their life, and I mean, they died.
Right.
Like, they would, and if I guess it's just a matter of gauging your odds of something,
Mm.
and knowing. I don't know. It's just like I feel like we're kidding ourselves when we suggest that the world wasn't full of things you wouldn't expect.
Right. No,
Like,
that's
there's always the chance of dying. There never wasn't.
no, and that's always been a thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like we just started questioning it out of nowhere because
Right.
of one instance or one time.
And living your life in fear is never, or rather, using fear as a medium to gauge how you should live your life
Right.
is I don't think is very productive or effective either.
You're putting all these restrictions on people, and it affects the mind state of that person and,
Right.
and the different groups of people. Or as a whole, it's not very healthy. Just having the communication, like the conversation we're having now,
Yeah.
is really healthy for people. And when they tell you can't have those conversations, or you can't be in a group of more than 10 people or something,
Yeah,
when there's more than that in the barbershop at any given moment of the day.
right.
And you love that about the barbershop, or that space you're in, to have
Mhm.
all those peoples and all that conversation to learn from, and obtain knowledge and stuff.
Right.
So I think that's a big issue with why there's a lot of depression in the States right now. It's
Yeah,
Well,
people
we-
are feeling isolated and
Yeah.
stuck, and like they don't have anyone to reach out for. And it's funny because even when I'd come back from the island, there's still a lot of my friends and stuff that I haven't seen, and I kind of have this mindset of like, do I reach out and say, hey, do you want to hang out, or like, do I try to be respectful of
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
like and I don't really know, like, are they
You never
comfortable?
know.
Would they be comfortable? But there is that whole kind of thing where even when you want to reach out and be be there for somebody, you almost question, you're like, is this like the right thing to do? So
Right.
yeah, I think, and especially people like who are facing mental illness, like being isolated and having to face mental illness alone and away from people, like that's tough, man.
Right.
It's like,
That's not how we usually handle those things. You
Yeah.
go see a psychiatrist or a therapist or something, but you can't necessarily do that, right?
Yeah. Well, you probably, if it's medical, you probably can, but it's
Mhm.
it's
or it's
not
probably more like a Zoom meeting, you know what
right.
I mean?
Right,
It's
The
right.
therapist, yeah, exactly.
It's
It probably
dumbed
would be
down.
reduced to a Zoom meeting.
Right.
And the therapy would be the medicine in that situation, but the medicine is always only something that helps you still be able to live in your environment.
Mhm.
If you have no environment from a psychological standpoint to live in,
Right.
what's the point? It's kind of, I made this example before. It's like we're giving up in times like this all of the things that are worth living for to live.
Right. The essential
It's true.
things. The
You're right.
essential things.
That's actually
Yeah.
a really
Yeah.
good way to put it.
Mhm.
And so now you're living without all the things that are worth living for.
Right.
So is that living?
Right.
Like
It's a tough thing
it's like a
to.
purgatory. It's like you're alive, but you're not living.
And what do you do in that situation? Are you finding the middle ground, or
Yeah.
are you on the left or the right side where you're so opposed to
To one
one?
one thing
Yeah,
or the
and it's
other.
a tough thing to just be unbiased, I guess, to either side and be in the middle. I guess being in the middle is almost more frowned upon nowadays than being on one side or the
It
other.
could be.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
weird thing though that
Well, especially in times like this, they're so tumultuous that both sides are becoming radical.
yes,
And
exactly.
that's the scary part,
That's
because
the worst.
it's not that there's problems with the sides, it's the
Yeah.
the radicality or whatever of those sides, and then
Right.
when they start to clash like that.
Right.
Because the thing is too, I guess I shouldn't say that it isn't a problem that there is sides. It is. It is, because what's happening, and back to like what social media and the media in general is it's just this is a constant marketing scheme for people to be on a side. It's a constant reminder of what that side is.
Mhm.
But the reality is that I think more people from an organic standpoint have values that exist on that side and all other sides.
Right.
It's a compilation. Each one of us is a compilation of different opinions and perspectives.
Right.
It isn't just, say I'm opposed to the masks. It doesn't mean a hardcore Trump supporter or
Right.
something like that. You know what I
But
mean?
one side might take it that way and
Exactly.
turn it into that when it's really, in all reality, it's not like that.
Yeah.
You're just being unbiased or in the middle
Yeah.
in some sense where it's like, I see things a little bit this way and I see
Right.
things a little bit that way. What's wrong with that?
Exactly.
I think
And-
part of the two-party system is where it's like it's pitting the two sides against each other right off the jump. And
Yeah.
It's part of the problem, I believe.
There was
But-
a really fantastic a video I saw that explained that. Actually, where is it? I might want to pull it up. Actually, it's this guy talking about how that's what the media does,
Mhm.
and he put it just so well. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up. I'll put it on the speaker here. He did a great job explaining the way that when people are watching the internet or catering to a side,
Mhm.
the media's job is to make you feel like the other side is destroying the world. And then that's that perpetuation, and they do it so perfectly.
I was going
with
to say
both
they're
sides.
doing a great job.
They're doing a great
Yeah.
job, because that's what you think. Like when you think about the worst part of what one side, it's so important not to watch the news. I keep telling people that, and they go, "Why not watch the news? Don't you
Right.
want to be informed?" It's like it's one thing to be informed; it's another to be in a constant in a constant state of fear and anger.
Right.
I don't think I have it.
Yeah, it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, though. I think it was Denzel who said if you watch the news, you're misinformed, and if you don't, you're uninformed.
Exactly.
It's
yeah.
tough. You got to
Right.
find a
Which
balance.
which I would say honestly, if I had to take a choice, I would rather be uninformed.
Yeah.
I don't even
Yeah.
want your deception. For me, I don't watch the news. The thing for me is that like I agree with you in a way that it feels to me like your daily dose of like fear and
Anger.
anger
Yeah.
and
Why?
conflict.
Hey, today
for
we're gonna
me-
tell you why you should be afraid and angry.
Right.
Right.
So for me,
Kinda
it's
thing.
like
It's like,
I just
no.
try to be more like focused on my direct experience and like this is my life, this is what I'm doing,
Right.
and not paying so much attention to these things that ultimately I don't really have any control over.
Exactly. I think we even talked about that. It's the action of taking the world on your shoulders.
Hmm.
You're convinced, in other words, that it is your job to uphold the values of your side.
Hmm.
And these things are only stroking egos and then pride. You develop
Right.
ego and pride out of doing something like that, instead of looking inward and saying, "What can I fix inside myself?" Because that's really That's the only true way of changing the world, is by changing yourself. It's a completely backwards system in that sense, because they'll put all the problems of the world on your shoulders and convince you that it's your job to uphold those values.
Right.
When really what it is to value your own development as a person.
Right.
And they'll convince you too, on top of it, that doing that is selfish.
Right. But in all actuality, those things are just organic,
Yeah.
Those things you can do on your own and without the negative impact it might have,
Yeah.
or that side of it.
Well, imagine, like, I don't know, just becoming who you are. Look
Mhm.
what you're doing for your community, for society in a way.
Mhm.
Look at the kind of outreach and the kind of service you're providing. That's that's a product of you focusing on yourself and becoming exactly who you want to be.
Right.
Versus
Solely.
Right, solely, versus the alternative is being somebody whose ambitions it is to change other people to be the way that you want them to be.
Right.
See how backwards that is?
That's not
When
how
you
it
are
should be.
going on this you're going on this, whatever, you're trying to just reach out and change people.
Right.
People can't change from the outside. They have to change from the inside.
yeah.
Everything comes from within.
For sure. I agree.
And you can inspire people, but like we were talking about that again, these are things that happen indirectly and passively. So somebody might want to be a barber and run into your work online,
Right.
or through a friend who's like, oh yeah, I get my hair cut by Ty all the time, and you're like, oh, who's Ty? And he checks you out, and you're like, man, he's inspirational. Look at his work.
Right.
You couldn't say to somebody who wants to be, you couldn't like say I wanted to be a barber, and you approach me and you just start hammering me with all the ways you became a good barber.
Right.
You would
That might not work for you.
Right, I wouldn't be able to find the way that I could become good at it.
Right. I can teach you the skills and things like that. But
Right.
It's not like I said earlier. Everybody's different, so not everybody's going to learn at the same speed or in the same way as the last person.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess, your job as an individual to learn and adapt. Like I said earlier too, is to these things to get through that to that point in time. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's necessarily hard if you don't have those outside influences, like you're
Right.
saying. Like media is definitely
Well,
a terrible thing.
talk about a double whammy too. You're not only is the exposure to that kind of content from mainstream media and even social media and the way it works. Have you seen that Netflix special? Netflix original or
Social Dilemma.
Social Dilemma.
Yeah,
Thank you, Josh.
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard
it's
a
really
lot of good
good.
things. Yeah.
But essentially, and it's not really a spoiler alert. You will probably already know this.
Yeah.
Based off of what you like and share and stuff on social media, you create your own echo chamber. In other words, and so it's not. Again, it comes off a little bit malevolent, but I do think it's just the way a well-tailored system is. Like, for instance, you would always want to eat something you like to eat. So that's kind of what social media does. It goes, oh, you like political videos.
Feeds it right
so
to
now
you.
here's more political videos. Boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you have this very tailored opinion because mainstream media can buy as much ad revenue as they have as much ad revenue as they want. And they just start saturating the
It's crazy how that works, though. We were talking
streams.
about that in the barbershop the other day.
Yeah.
Is when you like click on something like an ad, or it could just be you're talking out loud.
Yeah.
And I don't know how this actually works, where you could be talking about something you don't necessarily are into at all. Let's use, for example, like bed sheets.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the next day, you're getting all these ads on your Facebook and your Instagram about bed sheets.
All
Yeah,
the
I
time.
think
a
it's
weird
because
thing,
some
right?
of the
It's
apps
super
listen. Some of
weird.
the apps will use your microphone.
For sure. And it's I actually watched the documentary on Netflix one time, Terms and Conditions.
Yeah.
And it talks about that, where even when you're using Google,
Yeah.
as soon as you use their search engine, you're essentially giving them the permission to use your likeness and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And it's nothing you really essentially agree to. Like,
Well, it's by default.
Right.
You can turn it off, but they just turn it on for you when
It's
you do
weird.
it.
Yeah,
unless
it's-
you actually go in there and turn those things off. It's freaking. It is weird. It is weird. And that's part of the problem. And the point I was making there is that imagine now that's the reality we live in, and the only thing you can do is be home and watch TV and be on your computer or your phone.
And so what happens in result of that?
In result of that, you have this extremely inflated opinion,
Mhm.
so heavy you can barely stand. You know what
Right.
I mean? And you're screaming at the top of your lungs
You're getting
constantly,
angry, yeah.
angry.
It's not a good thing.
So yeah, that I think was really just an extremely vicious cycle everybody was put into all at the same time.
Yeah, it's tough. But I think we're getting through it.
I think we are too. I think there's a lot of good things on the rise, and I'm hoping things will go back to normal sooner than later.
Yeah.
I guess that's always been everybody's
Hopefully
hope.
2021,
Yeah.
brings us a lot of joy and happiness, man, because the last year has been pretty, it's been tough for everybody, man, as a collective. Everybody's going through something, and you add a pandemic to the mix.
Oh yeah.
It's real tough, man. So hopefully 2020 is better. I had a project that I was doing back to like the field day thing.
Yeah.
I took that idea and I turned into essentially a like a drive-in like field day but it would incorporate live performances, a basketball tournament, a police versus fire charity game.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Holy crap.
And so, like food vendors and food trucks and stuff, we were going to do it right in Granville Park again. And I had the date set, and then Corona hit, and we couldn't do anything. So we're going to hopefully do it again, or try to do it for the first time this summer. It's called Hope for Home, and I've been working with my buddy Sergio King on it. And so, like those types of things that you haven't been able to do, a lot of events that I've been trying to plan around this whole thing even deter you from
I know.
everyday life.
Well, speaking of really overlooked thing that's happened is in the same instance, but on a wider scale. Like you're trying to, at the end, connect with the community, support the community, and have that kind of outreach. In the same way, supposedly 4 and 8 have been cut down to like 0.
Really?
And as much terrible things that there are, I'd rather we could complain about all the different ways that society doesn't focus its access revenue on certain things. There is at least a lot of people in this country that do have a lot to do with foreign aid and stuff, and that's like to a 0. So there's a number.
Crazy.
There's a number there, and deaths from starvation and malnourishment and lack of housing and stuff like that from other third world countries that don't get that support from Europe and the United States anymore.
I always tell people, being an immigrant kid from the islands, is it like, even in times like this, it makes you appreciate life that much more because of where you come from. I didn't grow up necessarily poor, but I didn't have much. But we made dues with what we had, and that was like the biggest thing. And I think that's the perseverance part of it. Being an adult now is like, it doesn't matter, man. Like, money comes and goes. Like I said, you can't take it to the grave with you.
No.
And you'll make it, and you'll spend it, and you'll lose some.
Dude, I tell you, I couldn't agree with you more on that too. Because I always say when it comes to money, money has so little to do with what you can buy, and has everything to do with what you can do with it. That's pretty much what money is. And it's like, if you're doing things with your money, and like, even if it's just investing or putting it into organizations or creating events with it, like yourself, and sort of making something out of it versus just buying more products that you don't need. We had a great conversation about that too. It's like this freaking never-ending slew of shit.
I was gonna say, you can use your money, you can buy a bunch of shit that you don't care about. It doesn't actually mean anything, or you could use your money to enact some sort of positive change. And I know, like, personally for me, one of the best feelings that I've ever had in my life is helping somebody and seeing in that person that it actually truly means something, and that you had a positive influence on this person's life. Like, what is more valuable than that? There's very few things, I would say. And, like, I would say the things that are more valuable than that, money probably can't buy.
No, not at all.
Absolutely.
Not at all. It's that type of stuff isn't encouraged enough, because it's just, I don't know why. I wish I had an answer personally, like why it's not, more mainstream or glamorized. It's not. You know what I mean? It just doesn't seem to be.
No, definitely isn't. I don't think, anyway.
Which also gets into something me and you were talking about how there's so many good things that are going on in the world, but it doesn't make for good, like, news or media. Like, people aren't consuming that. People aren't like, wow, another feel-good story. I hope I get one tomorrow. It's like, they like the conflict and the tension and, like,
the negativity.
Yeah, there's something about that
the
that
criteria.
People really do.
Oh man, the criteria of what makes the news is so influenced by what evokes fear.
I think that's mainstream media in a nutshell.
Yeah, because it has everything to do with how likely you're to tune back in.
Right.
Like, Ty's got this great event going on. It's a food drive, and it's a thing that's getting public officials like the police department and the fire department doing fun things with the community. All this, it's like, wow, that's great. But that's not going to make tomorrow's news.
No.
They're not going to talk about it again. Look how well the rash has been being talked about. Just not to say it, actually, because I think it messes up the algorithm for YouTube. But you know what I mean?
24/7 coverage.
Yeah,
24/7 news coverage
for 9 months, and people are still like tuning in. I don't even put it this way: I don't watch the news at all, and I can find out everything that's going on about it just by asking one person at work. Because there's 99 out of 100 people that I know, at least from work, have watched the news and understood exactly what they're saying is going on.
Yeah, and then that's what you talk about when you're at work and things like that. Working with those people every day,
So it's like, whoa, But But man, what a year it's been. And well, we're close to 2 hours, so I do want to wrap this up.
Nice.
And I want to just come full circle in the fact that like there's a lot of positives that did happen in this year. You know what I mean? I think, and I don't want to not give those things credit. Like for instance, I did a little traveling. This is coming up. I mean, I'm sure that there's been a lot of things, even in your industry, in your line of work, that have really shined a little bit brighter because of the times like these.
Yeah, like I said, the house call services, the mobile service has become a thing with all the food trucks. You even see food trucks everywhere nowadays. It's opened up a lot of different things, but I think it's all about perseverance, man. This year has been a trying year for everybody.
Well, the people who make it, and hopefully it's most people, will be so much stronger.
Yeah,
and
from it.
I think on a really grand scale too, what's happened, or a good way to surmise what's happened, is that there was this great meme that I saw, and it said, what did it say? Happy, or what is it? Yeah, good men, or no, what was it? No, strong men make good times make weak time, or rather, good times make bad. What the hell was it? No, strong men make good times make weak men make hard times. So there's almost like a phase of society that kind of keeps rolling, and we might be on that side of it where we will be the product of really good times to come because of a year like
faced all this adversity.
Exactly.
And you got the lesson.
A year like this. A year like this, or even our generation, in what we've seen, with 9/11, Y2K, the various viruses, we are then becoming the strong generation to make the good times. Because it makes perfect sense. Because good times, obviously, if you have nothing to worry about, you're
comfortable.
It's very hard to build strength.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very hard to build strength. It's almost like you were saying, I think, back with the competitions. If you were really good at it, you would learn so little because you wouldn't have the luxury of making mistakes.
Right, because you already think or whatever it is, that mindset that I'm always going to win, or if I won at the beginning, and kept winning, it would have created that mindset of like, what more is there?
Yeah.
And I think everybody gets to a certain point like that too in career or whatever you do, where it's like you hit a wall and you're like, what more can I do?
Yeah.
And then you try to evolve and do different things.
Yeah, I feel like this is a good nail in the coffin, so to speak, in the event that this year was really securing in stone the strength of the generations that are alive today to go forward in time and create good times.
I heard one thing, though, before we get out of here.
Yeah.
On the other podcast, you were talking about as you grew older, you were listening to Jay-Z more.
Yeah.
Could you like touch on that a little bit?
Oh,
Jay-Z is one of my favorite artists
for me,
ever.
yeah. Well, no, it's funny because
I like what you said about it on the podcast.
Yeah, I'll
really
say that.
man.
I'll talk about that just a little bit.
That was cool.
So just so you know, Josh, on Inappropriality, they asked me a really great question, like what your favorite music was. It kind of went along those lines, but we had been talking about rap music, and Jay-Z had been somebody I kind of been listening to more and more often, and thanks to Spotify does a good job of like mixing up the songs and giving me new songs to listen to and stuff. And I was like, as a kid, I never appreciated his music at all because he wasn't like poppy and like he was no Kanye in the early 2000s. Kanye was very, hip hop and rap. He did a great job of making a song like that.
I could see that.
Jay-Z usually had a lot more messages to convey within his music.
There's an intricacy.
There's a much more intricacy. And that song, Story of OJ, was a good one, especially in it applied more to the conversation we were having about like investing and how money works and stuff like that. And he had a very basic, simple way of explaining to people who might not ever have those influences or people that they know in their lives, because that's really the extent of poverty is that mindset, and the unknown is really the not ignorance, but the lack of education towards what money can do. People don't realize, like we were just talking about, how people will buy shit with their money instead of invest it or spend it within their friends. You know what I mean? Create a sense of economy, within their own network,
within the group. Yeah.
Within the group, and that's something. just by example, that the story of OJ explained in a really good way.
Right, and it's a cool thing though.
It is a cool song too.
Yeah. But I feel like that though, and what I'll say though is I challenge you to listen to his first ever album, Reasonable Doubt. After
I
having
heard
this
it was really
conversation.
good.
It is really good.
I
And
heard somebody sent me one of his songs from that
Yeah.
album. I gotta listen to it.
And
What
so-
Reasonable Doubt?
Reasonable Doubt.
Yeah.
So 444 is what Story OJ, that was from that album.
Yeah.
And so that same, like those same concepts and ideologies and investing those things like that are all throughout that whole album, he's actually talking about on his first album. So you'd be amazed that as young as he was then, you know what I mean, he was dropping gems like that back then.
It's
And it
giving
was
you
cool.
$1 million a game for $9.99.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But that's like I said when I first got here, is like how much of a nerd I am with things, man.
Yeah.
When I get into things and I want to be a part of it, like I research the crap out of stuff, man.
That's a
And,
really good attribute to have.
It's cool because I really like naturally I didn't really know much about Mike other than through Delwyn and the Martins and Dean. So you know what I mean? It's cool to learn about somebody before you go and speak with them and have a
absolutely.
conversation. So
And the
cool.
repertoire of it too is great because like when we got to have you back on at some point,
Yeah,
and we'll
for
be able
sure.
to have another conversation
Yeah.
and we'll have a background to each
Right.
other.
Maybe I can
You know?
cut hair too.
Yeah, hey, we'll set it up. I was just really afraid to do cleanup, but if you have a really good cleanup strategy,
Dude, I
maybe
have a
we'll do
whole-
something
I have a
for
whole
you.
setup, dude. I'll take care of all that for you, Mike. And no issues there, dude. That's what I'm saying. It's I just want to demonstrate what I do, you know.
Well, we'll probably have to set something up like that then in the future
That'd be
because
cool,
that would
man.
be awesome.
After this whole like pandemic, you know.
Yeah.
Do even like an outdoor thing or
Yeah,
something like
something.
that.
We
That'd
could
be
figure
sick.
it out indoors too,
Yeah.
just lighting control and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, let's wrap this up. I like asking. You know, if you had one thing to tell the whole world, what would it be, Ty?
Family first, man. I love my family. I got 4 kids at home and a wife, and
Damn,
it's
father of 4.
Yeah.
Hit me with a fun fact this late in the podcast. That's insane.
We got more to talk about next time.
Yeah,
You see what I'm
there
saying?
you go.
And that's a big driving force in my career, I think, of barbering and all the things we just talked about in the community outreach is family first, man. That tight circle that keeps me going is the engine that will continuously keep me going, and that's my
Give you purpose.
yeah, man. That's it.
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to mention too. It's just the value. It's the understanding that purpose is so much more important than money.
Mhm.
Because like we were talking about, you could be as rich, and rich people aren't happy. That doesn't mean like just because you're rich doesn't mean you're happy.
Mhm.
And from a monetary standpoint, like I mentioned on in Appropriality,
Right.
like a good philosopher Bob Proctor was saying, you know, we're all rich, we're just short of money.
Right.
You know, so if you really want to know what the difference between being
Rich
and poor, it's just mindset.
Right.
It has nothing to do with money.
Right. It's a poor mindset. If you
Yeah.
have a poor mindset, negatively thinking,
Doesn't matter how much money you have.
essentially that's what's going to be in your life. You know, that's what you're speaking into it.
And I like saying that because I think it enlightens people to realize that you're already there, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
stop fucking worrying about it.
You're doing just
You're already
great.
doing just
keep
great.
it moving, man.
Just keep it
keep
moving.
You
All right,
gotta
guys.
do that.
This is a great way to wrap it up. Thank you
Family
so much
first.
for
Awesome,
listening.
man.
Woo! Peace out, guys.